Let's say you take the time and effort to build yourself a nice gazebo in your backyard. You want to install gutters to route the water where the water should be routed to, and head on down to your local big box store. In the gutter aisle, what you'll find is 2 items: large, cheap, and ugly. Oh, I guess that's 3 items. You may not even have room for a large, ugly, cheap gutter. So my solution is to build my own gutters out of wood. Here's how they work. The water falls off of the drip edge directly into the center of a narrow slot that's been cut into a 2x2. The board has a slight slope to it, causing the water to come down to one end of it. It drops into this hole, then down through a tube attached to the hole. The tube is then routed to wherever you need the water, like a rain barrel. The narrow gutter can easily fit into your tight spaces. And here you see I'm routing the water directly to the wisteria that was creating that tight space. Let's take a look at the process of making this gutter. First, you want to start out with properly dried wood. In other words, not the stuff you get at the big box stores. What I do is I buy the stuff at the big box stores, then I dry it out myself. I buy my wood 6 to 8 months in advance, then store it in an underground storage area where the temperature and the humidity are nearly always constant. While stacking your wood for storage, place little stickers or pieces of wood in between the levels. This will allow air to circulate all the way around the boards. The weight of the boards on top of each other will keep them in place while they dry out. If you don't happen to have your own personal underground storage area, I guess the next best thing is buy the straightest board you can get, then try to hurry up and build your gutter and get it tacked into place before it has a chance to start warping. The tool that we're going to use to make the trough in the gutter will be my router. When you hook up this square or flute router bit and spin it at 24,000 revolutions per minute, it can do some serious wood removal. However, the first problem you'll run into is a 2x2 is really too narrow to properly run a router over. This can be easily fixed by putting a 2x4 on either side of your 2x2. Now your working surface is plenty wide enough for your router. Clamp a guide into place to help you run a straight line down the middle of your board. It's best if you start doing a series of shallow cuts, making each one deeper and deeper. Doing it this way prevents your router from jumping away from your guide by grabbing too much wood at one time. And if you use a narrower router bit with each pass, you can start doing fancy stuff like this, where your groove actually gets narrower the deeper it gets into the wood. But if you're not into the fancy, stick with the tried and true flat groove. I did figure out that if you're in a hurry to build a lot of gutters in a short amount of time, you can actually speed the process up by pre-cutting your boards with a skill saw. It takes just a little bit of reconfiguration of the wood surrounding your gutter. Then set the cutting depth of your saw to the proper depth for your groove. Now, the more cuts you run down the middle of your board, the less wood your router has to remove. And in the end, the final product looks the same. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the Downspout. This is the very first wood gutter I built back in the late 90s, which, by the way, is still working fine. What I did was I drilled the hole, then I screwed a threaded piece of PVC pipe into the hole, and finally attached a drain hose using a hose clamp. This system works great, but it's not aesthetically pleasing. So here's my new method. Now I use sprinkler irrigation hose. It's relatively inexpensive, easy to use, and looks pretty good when it's installed. The outside diameter is 5/8, which is the biggest hose that I can fit into my gutter slot. Now you can just push the hose directly into the hole, then pull it back until it's just slightly below the level of your gutter slot. I don't worry about attaching it because when the wood gets wet, it's going to swell a little bit, which will pinch the hose into place. Additionally, when you're using tacks to hold your hose in place as it goes down the supports, this will also help hold it in the gutter. Speaking of holding it in place, we actually need to mount the gutter onto the gazebo. The gutter trough occupies between 1/2 and 1/3 of the board's thickness. So, pre-drill some holes in the bottom 1/3 of the board and start some 3-inch screws. I find a screw about every 2 feet works well to hold the gutter in place and keep it from warping. Well, I think that's about it, except for a reminder. Like all items made out of wood that's used outside, wood gutters do require maintenance. Every year I clean and repaint and restain as necessary. And this gutter is about 21 years old. Oh yeah, and with a hole this small for a drain, you'll learn to hate pine needles. Well, thanks for watching.